I am the Executive Director of the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and the Commission is pleased to be a part sponsor in today's event regarding broadband. We're calling it Broadband Summit 2.0, a variety of other things. But we are partners along with my colleagues at the County of Ventura, Mike Pettit, and the Economic Development Collaborative of Ventura County and Bruce Stensley, along with Bill Simmons with the Broadband Coalition. So thank you very much for being here. My responsibility is just to share a few welcoming remarks, and then I'll introduce a couple of, at least my commission chair, in fact, who has been quite strident in the importance of talking about broadband and the role that transportation can play in that. So just as I open this conversation up, and as the last few folks are getting seats, it's been about 100 years that we have had an absolute three truths when it comes to transportation. You generally got in your car. First, you filled up the gas tank. Then you got behind your car and you drove a steering wheel to get to your destination, unless you took a bus or carpool. But most of us, certainly in Ventura County, drive a car in some way, shape, or form, and have done this all over this country for 100 years. At the same time, we've had that form of technology that has been the way we've gotten around. And I will only say that the other third truth when it comes to this fact is that when we filled up our gas tank, we paid a gas tax at the pump. And that is how we paid for transportation in this country and in this state. That is all changing. It started changing arguably 15 or 20 years ago with the introduction of Priuses and hybrid vehicles, and that's just the start. You look at a Tesla today, unless you're John Proctor, whose Tesla is in the shop right now, you're not filling up, and you're not paying a gas tax, and you're not paying for our transportation system. So the guy that's responsible for making sure that we have mobility in Ventura County is scared to death about how we're going to pay for our future, because the way we've done it in the past is going to be no longer. I'm not going to say right now it's keeping me up at night, but we're 10 or 15 years away from that really being true. So the point in all this is that transportation technology is changing as fast as you could ever imagine, and faster than we've ever could have imagined 100 years ago. The idea of horse and buggy to a combustion motor to where we are today is frightening and exciting all at the same time, and we'll have a couple of speakers on the transportation side of things that will get to talk about that. And we'll share a little bit about what we have in store for our future. I'm going to call particular attention to my colleague, who will be introduced later as well, Randy Iwasaki from the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. Contra Costa is a county not too dissimilar to Ventura County, and they're doing some amazing, amazing things. So we'll look forward to having Randy's conversation as well. So with that, that's my welcome. I want to now introduce my chair, but also member of the county supervisors, supervisor and commission chair, Linda Parks. Linda.
Hi, good morning. I'm glad to be here. Get a little diversity in the room, get some women. Where are the women today? But we're all glad to be here. Thanks for having us. I really wanted to point out, what Darren had mentioned about where we're going in the future. Really not much has happened in transportation in the last 100 years, since the car was invented. But now things are starting to happen with the electric vehicles. And as a result of that, I was really delighted to see when we had a presentation at the Ventura County Transportation Commission by Caltrans, which is showing that wherever they have the opportunity, they're looking at trying to get broadband into our highways, electrify our highways, and get us all on the grid, because that is what is needed in the coming years. We're going to be able to have these automated vehicles, to have the Teslas, but we need to be able to be connected. And with 5G coming, we need a lot of infrastructure. And I feel like there's a great opportunity as we're electrifying our highways to also provide high-speed broadband to our rural areas. Even here in Ventura County, we have areas that don't have high-speed broadband. In my district, in Somas, for example, there really aren't the numbers, because it's a rural area, to have high-speed broadband. So what it takes to get that is partnerships. I know on the Transportation Commission, Council Member Simons from the city of Moorpark was saying, hey, and he's here today, right? If you have that opportunity, you're going to be putting infrastructure for broadband on the 118, how about Moorpark? And I'm saying, how about Somas? But those partnerships are essential. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what we have coming before us today. I'm also pleased to be on what is called the Clean Power Alliance, CPA. The Clean Power Alliance is the new community choice aggregation. The unincorporated Ventura County and 7 of its cities are all part of the Clean Power Alliance, which means that we will be getting our electricity purchased by the Clean Power Alliance instead of Southern California Edison. This gives us an opportunity to really push renewables. And then also, and I see we have several elected officials here, but I see Council Member Roseanne Michos here too, and you mentioned John Proctor and Marianne Rooney. So it's great to see the folks out here. But as we see the opportunities for broadband coming up, and with the Clean Power Alliance, we're going to be transferring, with electric vehicles, the need for more electricity, right? The broadband, the micro dishes, there's going to be a lot more demand for electricity instead of fossil fuels. And so if we can have that electricity coming from renewables, we're all better off. But right now I know, for example, that it's the cars and driving of cars that are creating the greenhouse gas emissions more so than our employment sites. So we need to do what we can to do that, get us into electric cars, get us into renewables. And broadband is an essential part of all of that. So really looking forward to this conference. I know that we have with us Assemblymember Irwin. She's been very important in leading an effort in cybersecurity in the Assembly, and has worked very extensively working with our new digital world. So at this time I'm going to introduce Jackie, and thank you so much for being here today, and thank you all for coming today. Thank you.
Boy, I think this crowd is probably twice as big as last year, and that is really great to see. I want to also thank everybody for coming to this discussion today on broadband. When many of us hear that term, broadband, we immediately think of a technical term, focusing on the speed rather than what it brings to our residents. In the past decades, it may have been useful to focus only on increasing speeds, getting past the drone of the modem when dialing up AOL. Who remembers that? But what we should think of when we hear broadband is access to opportunity. Broadband internet is now a basic foundational tool for Californians to live a prosperous life. Education, employment, and even entertainment are now almost entirely dependent on your access to quality, reliable broadband. And as Supervisor Parks mentioned, even in our district, although I think the claim is that we have 98% coverage here, we really do, those are not accurate numbers. Our rural areas do not have coverage, and Marianne Rooney has been talking to me constantly about even areas that are really close to urban, like Nyland Acres, have almost no coverage. So what does that do? It forces residents to rely on traveling to locations that offer public Wi-Fi, such as the Boys and Girls Club. Sometimes you go to Boys and Girls Club throughout the county and you see a lot of families that are right there in the parking lot using the Wi-Fi, or libraries and coffee shops. It is our responsibility as civic leaders, industry professionals, and stakeholders to learn about the issues limiting our residents' access to broadband and find ways to improve our infrastructure. And that's why I'm glad that you are all here today, and I'm excited that we will all know more by the end of this event and hopefully be able to take some action. Among the things that we're going to learn today, or rather have reinforced, is just how far-reaching, fast-changing, and critical to our lives broadband is. Each of us relies on cell phones and the internet. High-speed communication increasingly touches our lives in routine activities at home, from watching TV, to streaming music, to asking Alexa to order more toilet paper. That's what my husband does. He shows off his Alexa by ordering toilet paper, so boxes and boxes of it in the garage. Unfortunately, Alexa also announces who's at the door. He put that special feature in 2 days ago, and then he left town, and my son ordered Burger King at 12:30 last night, and it was announced in the bedroom. So. But it also improves how we access healthcare, how fire and police professionals keep us safe, and how we educate our children. All of these things, those of us in this room already take for granted, but for many in our community, access to these tools is not always certain, and for many, it is too heavy an economic burden. When looking at the past 5 years of broadband access, there's been almost consistent growth, but it's almost entirely due to the proliferation of smartphones with internet browsing capability. If we look at the percentage of our population with traditional computer-based access to broadband, you will see that we have flatlined. It is those trends that we need to recognize and ask questions about to make sure we are supporting the necessary programs and changes to truly be competitive as a region in an era where technology is changing so quickly. Before we can reach our goal of broadband access, we have work to do. We need to know where we stand today, and thanks to local research, we know that we are just barely keeping up. We need to know from others what kind of best practices we can borrow. We need to know what the nature is of our local talent and the resources upon which we can build. And we need to build out both our local and regional strategies for ensuring our competitiveness here in Ventura County. And with the agenda that we have today, I'm confident that we can start to work on accomplishing those goals. So enjoy the session, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say hi.
Thank you, Assemblymember Irwin, for being such a strong supporter of broadband and technology in our area. And thank you for bringing it out of the realm of the technical, but into the realm of why this is so important, why broadband is so important. It does affect every aspect of our lives, from applying to a job. When you think about applying for a job today, you can't do it without going online, and that gets down to some of the most fundamental reasons. Well, on behalf of our County of Ventura Board of Supervisors and our CEO, Michael Powers, I want to thank you all for being here. County and community leaders, city leaders, and business leaders. The topics that we're going to be covering today are very important. And my name is Mike Pettit. I'm with the County of Ventura, Assistant CEO. That's new. I'm a recovering technologist. I was formerly the CEO. But I want to start with a question as I set the stage for what you're going to be hearing today. If you had a crystal ball, would you use it and to look into the future to see what's ahead? Most all of you right away would say, yes, absolutely I would. First I might look up winning lottery ticket numbers or something like that. But there are some ethical questions around whether you would use a crystal ball. So some of you might be considering those options. But before you make your decision, I want to point out a few people who maybe made some very bad future predictions because they did not have a crystal ball. And just to highlight a few of them, we have the individual. He is actually the president of a research company. He predicted that nobody would use the light bulb, that everybody involved with inventing the light bulb would say that it was just a colossal failure. We also had another individual, Daryl Zanuck, a movie producer at 20th Century Fox, in 1946 said, television won't last because people will get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. We also had, more recently, as recent as 1995, Cliff Stoll, in an article of the internet, he said, the truth is no online database will replace your daily newspaper. We've seen the impact of that in our area as well. So there's this great site, it's an infographic, Great Bad Predictions, and you can see throughout history, people with a lack of a crystal ball have made some very bad future predictions, but one of them I want to point out is relevant to today. And this was a prediction by the president of Michigan Savings Bank advising Henry Ford's lawyer not to invest in the Ford Motor Company. And he said, the horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty or a fad. If you ever asked these gentlemen if they thought they would be driving a car or they would go to a ranch in the future to ride a horse, that it wouldn't be their primary mode of transportation, I'm sure you would have gotten a resounding no way, that will never happen. Even though it might have happened all around them. This is one of our early cities, and you look at everything was done by horse. And so it's very unusual to think that these people probably said, the horse will never change. We'll always have horses. We aren't going to move to these petroleum-driven vehicles in our society. But interestingly enough, we go to ranches today to ride a horse. They're not used to drive around in our society day by day. So a crystal ball could have helped, and it brings us back to that. But we don't have a crystal ball. But what do we have? We have something closer to that, a barometer. What does a barometer do? It detects change. And so a few conditions in our atmosphere and our environment of change are here, and we can see them in our society today. But some of those barometric changes weren't recognized even by individuals on Route 66. Towns along Route 66, when the interstate system was announced, connecting all of the cities and towns throughout our nation, towns were bypassed by the interstate system. So today, actually, there was just a news article within the last several weeks indicating that the last vestiges of a complete drive of Route 66 are fading away. You won't be able to make that classic historic journey because the interstate has largely replaced that. And this is an example of a town that didn't see those barometric changes. This is a town in Texas, and it was on Route 66 when Interstate 40 bypassed this town, and the results were devastating. You can imagine, to the economy in that town, to the livelihood of all the people in that town when the new interstate system went in. Those are the barometric changes that we see today. The question is, are we paying attention to the barometer to react to those changes? These are some of the barometric changes that we are experiencing with Uber, with ride sharing, leveraging the capacity of cars that sit 94% idle most of the time that can be used for other purposes. Google with driverless cars, and they've been doing this for a number of years. The technology is here, so what is just around the corner? Tesla has announced, even as far back in 2015, that driverless cars can go across the nation by 2018. There's a great 3-minute video, if you watch, that Tesla put out about a driverless car journey from their Tesla headquarters through the Silicon Valley area and back. And the great thing about it is the individual in the car doesn't touch the car at all, drives all around. He gets out of the car and the car finds its own parking place. How great would that be? This is Elon Musk predicting, this was back in 2015, that by 2018 cars could drive across the country autonomously, and that's so true. But along with that, it's going to transform our industry. Daimler Chrysler back in 2015 delivered their first autonomous truck delivery. Interestingly enough, it was a delivery, a shipment of beer. I don't know why. And followed in that same year, just a side note, the first autonomous delivery by drone of pizza. So you can see where our communities are heading. But this technology is here. These are the types of changes that are present that give us a very strong measurement of the change ahead. Our governor signed in 2012 legislation in this state that made it possible for autonomous vehicles to drive on our roadways, on our interstates. And by 2015, that legislation has been implemented. And we actually have all the laws in place today where when a company meets all of the safety requirements, et cetera, they can put driverless cars on our roads. We may see signs like this in the very near future. And one is a shock when you get on the freeway and you have to make a double take to decide which lane to be in. But with change becomes new issues. This is the curious case of a Google driverless car that committed a traffic violation. Who do you give the ticket to? And that's the type of change that's coming and is ahead. When you look at the impact of autonomous vehicles in our society, there's all kinds of profound things that can happen. There's some discussion about cars as the third personal space. We have our home space, our office space, and our cars. What will we be doing in our cars when they're driving? It's freed up a tremendous amount of time now. In fact, some say that in France today, there are over 300,000 people living in their cars. Imagine if we have individuals in our society that go, I can live in my car, it drives around, I've got everything I want, I'm connected, why do I need a home? So those are the types of profound changes ahead. The insurance industry will have a paradigm shift when cars are driverless. There's some people that say that the insurance will be a factor of the vehicle and who the manufacturer versus the individual riding in the car. Obviously, those charges will be passed on to whoever's riding in the car, but that's the type of shift in the industry that's coming. There will be job losses in the transportation industry. When you talk about just the example of Daimler Chrysler having driverless trucks deliver goods, what does that do to all of the individuals who are currently employed in a transportation capacity? But on the flip side, there will be new industries generated. Car driving ranches, and believe it or not, those exist today. Many of you may have gone to them. Maybe you went to the racetrack and drove a NASCAR vehicle on the track, or you went to, Porsche has a number of them throughout the US where you can go and drive a high performance car. Remember, those cowboys thought you would never go to a ranch to ride a horse for pleasure. Will we be going to ranches to drive a car for pleasure in the future? New jobs. Land use changes. In a driverless society, will we need as many parking spaces as we have today? The resounding answer by all the experts is no, because cars will be a means of transportation and they'll be used while you're not riding in them. Once it drops you off, the car will go somewhere else and pick someone else up and give them a ride. They don't need to be parked and idle using up land. So that creates whole new opportunities for our land use. Road tax revenue changes. Darren mentioned that. In a driverless society, if we're not fueling at the pump, and with the tax changes ahead, what does that do with our road tax and our maintenance? And of course, the ever-present security concerns with hacking autonomous vehicles, what kind of safety or security implications are there? And even the artificial intelligence ethical dilemma. Some of you may have heard of this ethical dilemma of a driverless car having to make a decision of whether to steer into one individual or a group of individuals or an elderly individual or a child if they can sense it. And those are the kind of profound decisions ahead brought to us by driverless cars. So what does all this mean? It means we're at a fork in the road. We can choose to look forward and get out ahead of the coming future with driverless cars and autonomy and the technologies that will be required to do that, or we can turn towards the past. The opportunity today is to learn about the future and to react and to respond, to read that barometer and make appropriate decisions. All of you in the room are leaders, and so this is an opportunity for us to learn, to gather information, and make smart decisions about the future that we're entering into, so that we don't become like that town in Texas that was bypassed by the interstate. Even though they saw the map, they didn't respond, they didn't react, they didn't plan for it. And that's what excites me about the lineup of speakers that we have today. We have experts in this area of transportation that is being disrupted by technology. And all of that technology relies on high-speed communications on broadband. And so you're going to hear from a number of different aspects talking about what's happening at the state level, what's happening at local levels, at county and city, what we can do to work together in our different municipalities and county and entities and public and private to be out in front of this coming change and disruption. So that's what excites me. And so without further discussion on that, I'm excited to invite Ali Zagaria. Ali is the Deputy District Director in Caltrans District 7. He's responsible for traffic operations assets throughout the state over the 1,200 center miles of conventional highways throughout our state. So Ali's going to come up and share with us about what Caltrans is doing and their part in this high-tech driverless community that's ahead of us. So Ali, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mike, for the introduction. As stated, my team is responsible for traffic operations assets and the safe mobility of all the users on the state highway system in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Couple responsibilities that keep me awake at night sometimes, but a great recipe for turning gray at my dad. By the way, I mean, really in terms of the challenges that we have, the transportation system in Los Angeles and Ventura counties are amongst the most challenging and complex transportation systems in the world. But the rewards are infinite as well. I feel very fortunate that I'm in a position that I can be part of the decision-making process to deal with challenges of the transportation system. And it is really through the partnership with our local and regional partners that we can actually make a difference, save lives, and make the travel experience more convenient for all of the travelers in LA and Ventura counties. I want to thank Daryl Carroll for inviting me to speak on this topic. He's truly a great leader. He has a great transportation vision for the county, and I've been very fortunate, and it's been an absolute pleasure for me to work with him in the last few years. He also heard that Contra Costa Transportation Commission Executive Director Randy Osaki will be here to, who's a really national figure and expert in ITS and connected autonomous vehicles, to talk about some of the wonderful things that his county is doing. And so please consider this speech a little warm-up to the dazzling speech that we were going to be hearing from him later. My talk today will focus on some of the key potential benefits and impacts of connected and autonomous vehicles. I'll be referring to as CAV, and how Caltrans, in partnership with local and regional agencies, can leverage wired broadband as a very important infrastructure element to leverage full connectivity of the future. But before I get into the meat of things, I'd like to share a little story with you. In a past event at ITS California, the executive director of ITS America, Shaylin Bad, gave a really moving keynote speech about the developments that are happening in the world of ITS and connected and autonomous vehicles. Within his slides, he had a slide of his young daughters as an icebreaker with the audience. And in his words, he wanted to make sure that the audience thinks twice before they start throwing the tomatoes. So I don't have young children, and I don't have great grandchildren either, but I would like to introduce Lizzie. My daughter's a mini Australian Shepherd. She has a tiny body, but a giant personality, and a whole lot of sass. Oh my God. I'd like to begin by sharing a little background on connected and autonomous vehicles. Some of you may recall or have heard about the US DOT Automated Highway System successful demonstration on Interstate 15 in San Diego back in the 90s, which really set things in motion for truly amazing advancements that followed in the last 2 decades. these advancements in automation, artificial intelligence, and the marriage between the two have brought us to a remarkable transformation of transportation as we know it. And it's happened really in two different paths. One being the connected vehicles that relies on total connectivity and communication of all transportation actors, vehicles, pedestrian, bicyclists, and infrastructure. And the other, the autonomous vehicles technology that is also making enormous progress, which I will cover a little later. In any major system development, the existence of an architecture is essential. So in around 2014, the US DOT Joint Program Office sponsored the development of CAV implementation architecture. And then later in 2015, they issued an enhanced version of that. At the national level, it is important to recognize the role of the regulatory and lead agencies on CAV. Each of these agencies shown here play a significant role contributing to the amazing development that's happening here in the United States and globally. For example, Federal Highway Administration leads the effort to evaluate the impacts of CAV on the highway system, and NHTSA deals with the safety aspects and the necessary regulations that need to be adopted in testing and deployment of the vehicle technologies. The technology companies, automakers, and academia play a significant role in the research and deployment and development and testing of the CAV technology as well. The Society of Automotive Engineering, on the other hand, which is a standards developing organization for engineering, has developed a 5-level car automation that covers the autonomous vehicles journey from level 0, which is low automation, to level 5, which is full automation. Here is a picture of that, of the 5 levels that highlight the path to full autonomous functionality, which means driverless cars with no steering wheels and without any need for driver's interference. As you can see, and it's a little bit difficult to see, levels 0 to 2 and levels 3 to 5 are separated as groups. The distinction lies with whether the driver or the vehicle is principally responsible for watching the road. Levels 3 to 5 are for highly automated vehicles, which can take full control of the driving task, in at least some circumstances, with level 5 providing for full automation for all driving modes. So a good example to relate to this chart would be the Tesla cars that can operate at level 3, where the car is capable of monitoring the road, but the driver must be on standby or sit by to take over the control of the car as needed. It is at level 5 that will be able to enjoy coffee, read a book, take a nap, while the vehicle will drive us to our destination under fully automated environment. As mentioned earlier, Google, Audi, GM, and a lot of other car manufacturers have done substantial amount of testing at level 5. I'm going to quickly go over some of the national initiatives. One is US DOT National Proving Grounds, which was initiated in November of 2016 to designate automated vehicle test beds nationwide. It resulted in 10 automated vehicle proving grounds to encourage testing of CAV new technologies. Though they are no longer recognized by the US DOT, as a recent announcement that just came out. I thought that I would still talk about this because it has helped create a momentum for California's further effort to advance the safe deployment of automated technology. The proving grounds designees in California are Contra Costa Transportation Authority and their Momentum Station, which Randy Osaki will be talking in more details about the wonderful things that are happening in that county. And the other location is the San Diego Association of Governments, City of Chula Vista in San Diego County. Another connected vehicle related testing and development opportunity came from AASHTO, ITE, and ITS America via the SPAT challenge, which stands for Signal Phasing and Timing, which basically it is an initiative that encourages public sector transportation owners and operators to work together to test the deployment of dedicated short-range communication, also known as DSRC, for exchange of data between the infrastructure and the vehicles. In Palo Alto, Caltrans, in partnership with the city, is testing sophisticated algorithms to try exchange of data between the traffic signal controllers and the vehicles. So the data that is received by the controllers, for example, would be the location and speed of the vehicle, and in exchange, the data that is transmitted to the vehicle is this signal phasing and timing that allows the vehicle, whether driven by a live driver or driverlessly, to adjust speed in anticipation of an upcoming red light, for example, which enhances safety and improves the mobility, the efficiency of the traffic flow on that given segment of the corridor. City of Anaheim also is working on similar projects, similar algorithms, even though they're not part of the SPAT challenge, but their focus is on understanding what does this type of technology mean in terms of different platforms that are installed by different cities and jurisdictions. So there will be really valuable guidance coming out of that effort that would contribute to the eventual national guidelines that will be developed on the subject. A couple of examples of things that are happening. City of Los Angeles has developed their automated vehicle incubator focused on the shared vision of improving safety, mobility, and equity for LA future transportation system. They have a business model that attracts partners to deploy, test, and further the development of the CAV. Lastly, in 2017, Caltrans, in partnership with LA Metro, UC Berkeley Path, and Volvo, demonstrated successfully truck tuning, which is based on truck-to-truck DSRC communication, and controlled through the so-called cooperative adaptive cruise control on Route 110 near the Port of Los Angeles. It was a very exciting demonstration of how truck platooning through automated technology can help traffic flow, enhance safety, and reduce truck emissions. Another effort funded through the Senate Bill 1, currently underway, is Caltrans' partnership with UCLA focused on infrastructure-based communications networking for autonomous transportation. This project will test the ability to have control of connected and autonomous vehicles on the highways by being able to monitor and centrally control their speed and distance between the vehicles. So why connected and autonomous vehicles? Some of this may have already been shared by Mike, but I think it's worthwhile to repeat them here. Because we want a safe transportation system that is environmentally friendly, has the level of intelligence to provide smart and reliable options, and is connected for safety, efficiency, and convenience. These are goals and qualities that have received overwhelming support across the industry by both public and private sector. Let's take a look at these in more details. In the eyes of the industry, there is no doubt that the biggest benefit of CAV is safety. Currently, about 40,000 deaths in the United States occur as a result of crashes. We know that about 94% of these crashes are as a result of the driver's behavior. That means over 37,000 of these deaths are preventable if we could eradicate or significantly reduce drivers' errors. That's almost the entire population of a small city whose lives can be saved. That's saving the lives of over 100 people every single day. In Ventura, every day more than 10 people who either die or get seriously injured in driving accidents can be saved. That is by far the most rewarding aspect of CAV. The green cars of the future will be able to choose itinerary based on least amount of impacts on the environment. This could include factors the vehicle analyzes, such as vehicle control systems that automatically accelerate and brake in the traffic flow to conserve fuel more efficiently than the average driver. As an example of related research and development, the University of Minnesota just received a $1.75 million grant from National Science Foundation to further study CAV and future transportation services. It is anticipated that the CAV will have the ability to follow more precise path, allowing roads to be much narrower, freeing up land for other purposes. Car sharing may increase, allowing back alleys to be turned into pocket parks, and huge parking lots could be converted into wetlands and ponds. The cars are already getting smarter with the advent of advanced driver's assistance systems. We know the technologies such as collision warning and avoidance systems, or adaptive cruise control, or in-lane control capabilities, my daughter's favorite, and more, that are becoming standard safety features that have already proven to be very effective in reducing crashes and fatalities. Ultimately, the driverless cars will have the acute level of intelligence that comes from sophisticated fusion of a multitude of data sets that come from their onboard CCTV camera, radar, and LiDAR detection systems to detect the presence of surrounding vehicles, trucks, motorcycles, pedestrians, bicyclists, and other objects. In addition to safety benefits, full connectivity will create the great potential for much more efficient mobility, because cars will be connected and much smarter. They will be able to maintain higher speed at much smaller headways, which is the distance between the vehicles. This would mean that each highway lane will have a much bigger capacity to carry vehicles. Right now, for example, the traffic engineers consider a capacity of about 2,000 to 2,400 vehicles per hour per lane. It is believed that the CAV will increase that number to about 4,000 or more. That essentially means that our current capacity can be doubled as much through use of new technology in the CAV world. So now let's focus a little bit on potential impacts of CAV. Although yet to be determined, CAV could lead to a notable reduction in the number of cars on the road if ride-sharing and the so-called shared mobility concepts materialize. On the other hand, they could lead to an overall increase in VMT, as they provide equal opportunity for use by those who currently cannot drive, such as children, older adults, and persons with disabilities. The transportation agencies will need to rethink the infrastructure investment strategies. For example, the heavy investment in parking in heavily populated areas, as was mentioned earlier, may no longer be a priority, since the cars can drive themselves to remote locations for parking with a significant lesser cost. With the advent of in-vehicle onboard instrumentations that support receiving basic safety and mobility messages, the need for heavy roadside and overhead signs along the freeways and highways may no longer be there. Lane widths may decrease as cars become smaller, and due to automated driving, consistent wheel tracks could be formed that may require different pavement engineering strategy and methodology. Loading and offloading by CAV may require new and more rampant considerations as part of our complete street solutions. And need for connectivity will compel much higher investments in wired broadband infrastructure, which I will talk about in a level later. The CAV can impact the job market, again, as mentioned earlier, because of the cars without drivers. This would have impacts on millions of jobs in taxi and trucking industries, for example. On the other hand, there will be a wider market for system engineering, information technology, and software specialties. traffic engineering will have to tailor itself as it applies to safety. For example, there will be less focus on reducing crash severity, but a higher focus on corridor performance outcomes and targets established based on urban environment priorities. For example, high volume or high speed facilities versus suburbia community-based active transportation needs. Insurance plays an essential role in enabling the use of connected and autonomous vehicles, as these vehicles will disrupt and fundamentally change the current insurance model. As the new era of automated driving continues, public perception and trust in these emerging solutions become very important in how the expected market penetration of these state-of-the-art technologies will shape up. There is certainly a much longer list of impacts that deserve continuous dialogue and brainstorming. These dialogues are very critical to further highlight areas for new and modified public policy in order to deal with the impacts as this amazing journey continues. I mentioned wireless broadband, and it has been mentioned several times today, as a major component in the future digitized infrastructure. To provide a little background, wired means that there is a physical connection to a physical location through a fiber or copper cable to provide wide bandwidth. And the bandwidth is then used for voice, data, and or video signals. Resonated by the comments made by Supervisor Parks and Assembly Member Irwin, in terms of potential benefits, the wired broadband supports the progressive vehicle automation as described earlier. Wired broadband state highway infrastructure will lay the foundation for real-time car-to infrastructure and car-to-car data communication. It will support cars becoming digitized mobility, information, and communication platforms, and of course the wired broadband will support smart cities applications tied to the Internet of Things that provide a myriad of services such as smart parking, smart lighting, travel and traffic demand management and congestion information, waste management, and so on and so forth. In terms of legal and policy considerations tied to wired broadband, there was an executive order back in 2006 that was signed into law, and more recently, Assembly Bill 1549 requires Caltrans during the planning phase of our specified highway projects to notify broadband development companies to establish communication protocols such as a website. This bill also required Caltrans in coordination with stakeholders to develop guidelines for wired broadband in the state right-of-way. In terms of actions taken by the department, it set up a broadband committee to work with the statewide council to deliver on the requirements of the executive order and develop statewide guidelines. As a result, these guidelines have been developed and were published in January of this year, 2018, and it is available at the website provided here. The department has identified single focal points in each district to address issues related to wired broadband, and I'll be happy to provide contact information after this if you're interested. The guidelines recommend two ways to incorporate wired broadband into the state right-of-way. One is through the early planning and initiation of our projects, and the other one is through the encroachment permit process. The guidelines provide Caltrans asset information and external utility information in a database in coordination with California Public Utility Commission. The guidelines address matters relevant to resources, conduit installation, ownership and maintenance of the facility, relocation of the facility, and permitting process and its review for administrative and other administrative processes involved for installing these really important infrastructure elements. That concludes my presentation. I don't know if there's time for questions right now or later.
We do have time for one or two questions, if anybody has a question for Ali.
we on? Yeah, a lot to take in there. With all the technology, it seems to me that the most important thing is the car being able to act as an independent entity. You know, in urban environments, it seems that this would work. But say in more rural places, it seems to me that your part would be to make sure that, say, road markings are more clear. I mean, what's an overall strategy? We used to think that you have to have, you know, transmitters embedded in all the roads. So what's the, in terms of what you do, in terms of visibility of the markings and things like that?
I think that's a great question for the technocrats and technology companies to address. I think as far as Caltrans and our strategy is concerned, right now, in terms of connected vehicles, our focus is to put the type of infrastructure in place that allows us to partner with our local and regional partners, and the wired broadband is a really great example of that, because it allows us to facilitate that communication that needs to be there to connect vehicles and infrastructure and create the potential for the safety benefits and mobility benefits that I talked about. With respect to rural areas, I think the autonomous vehicles will, in terms of you know, the capabilities that they will have individually by themselves, I think still a lot of safety benefits can be observed from that. What we can do as a state agency is to, for example, accentuate our striping, you know, making sure that we have clear delineation and striping out there on our roadways so that the autonomous vehicles be able to function as best as possible, if that's what's needed. And at some point, I think GPS technologies will be so strong that local type of delineations may no longer be something that would be needed. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Thank you.
I was curious, does your the state guidelines that you're talking about for wired broadband in the state right-of-way, do they include suggestions for us as local officials to look at for adopting, integrating our local right-of-way with state right-of-way in terms of extending those wired broadband capabilities?
Absolutely, and I think, as I mentioned, there are two ways to enter into that partnership. One is during the planning phase, during the initiation phase, which is really early in the process. That's where the discussions can take place and agreements can be reached. And those agreements and understandings can then be translated into elements of the project scope, which can then be further solidified and can go through the process for implementation. That to me is a better process to make sure that we end up getting what we really want. It might be a lengthier process, but I think it would be in my opinion would be a better process than encroachment permits. But the second option is the encroachment permit process. We do provide conceptual meetings before the applications are submitted. So I encourage, if you're interested, we can exchange cards and we can arrange for those preconceptual meetings that will be spent to discuss some of the requirements and the things that are expected as part of that process to be accomplished early in the process.
Thank you. All right, and just to keep us on schedule, this will be the last question for Ali, but there will be opportunity at the end of the sessions today to speak to all the speakers.
So won't these wired highways run next to or through an underserved community? Would the community be able to access the broadband?
Yes, that's the idea of pretty much a wired broadband to make that ubiquitous for everybody. I think folks that live in the rural areas that don't have Wi-Fi, I think this would be a great means to reach out to them and provide these really digitized benefits from a digitized world that the rest of us are benefiting from. So yeah, I think that's wired broadband is a way to accomplish that, and that can be done through partnership with the local and regional agencies, our partners. Thank you. Ali,
Thank you very much for your,
That's right.
thank you very much for sharing all of the high-tech things that Caltrans is doing. And you can see, as we've been talking about the change that's coming, that very much building roads and highways used to involve a lot of construction type work and building bases and infrastructure and drainage, but now there's very much a high-tech component to that as well. And we're going to continue this discussion, moving from the state now to the local level at the County of Contra Costa, and it's really my distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you Randy Iwasaki. Randy is somewhat of a rock star in the transportation industry, and so if for those of you that may be groupies for Mr. Iwasaki, there will be opportunity for backstage involvement and autographs in the future. But just a little bit about Mr. Iwasaki. In 2009, Government Technology identified Randy as one of the top 25 doers, dreamers, and drivers. In 2009, Randy was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger as the director of the California Department of Transportation. And in 2016, he was recognized as one of the top 10 public sector transportation innovators. So we're really privileged to have him here to share some of the groundbreaking work that he's doing in Contra Costa. And the nice thing about that is that gives us all a glimpse into what can be achieved when you put good people to the task of innovating and leading for what's coming in the future. So Randy, come on up and let's hear about it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today and share a story. I'm just going to tell you a story about our path down the technology road, if you will. I wanted to recognize Ali for his work in District 7. You know, when you're starting your career as a traffic engineer, what's the first thing they teach you? Just to say no. Ali is not a traffic engineer that says no. He's actually a person that says, yes, I'll look into that. And so I've worked with him for many, many years. So thank you for this opportunity. So I'm from Contra Costa County. People ask all the time, where is Contra Costa County? Well, it's in the Bay Area. It's right there where that white mark is on the left panel. We're a population of a little over 1.1 million people. So we'd be the 43rd largest state of the union, just ahead of Rhode Island. There's 1.043 million people. And just behind New Hampshire. And we have a thriving economy, much like I think Ventura County. We have a diverse set of businesses throughout Contra Costa County, and it generates revenue. I got to the authority in 2010, and our measurement, a little bit of our measurement is how much sales tax we bring in. We're a sales tax county, and I'm not saying I'm a good luck charm, but since 2010, it's gone up from 61 million to 94 million, so something must be right. So as I mentioned, we're a sales tax authority, so we actually oversee the planning, the design, environmental clearance, and construction on the state highway system, interstate system in Contra Costa County, so tunnels, bridges, highways. We just finished going from 4 lanes on State Route 4 to 8 lanes. We replaced about 7 bridges. We did those 5 sets of projects for a little over $500 million, and we did it under budget and ahead of schedule. And so we're pretty good at what we do. We're a staff of 20. I'll show you a chart on that. We're also the congestion management agency for Contra Costa County. So we measure congestion at about 140 different intersections throughout the county. And the reason why we do that is we have to, by law, produce a congestion management report. But it's a good KPI, it's a key performance indicator for us. So if we have a location that is going up in congestion-wise too fast, we go out and take a look to make sure that our investments are paying dividends. And then, as was mentioned before, we manage the largest secure autonomous vehicle test bed in the United States. First measure passed in '88. I know this is not a measure county. You don't necessarily need a measure to be innovative, but we did pass in 1988. I think we're the 3rd county in California. Promises made, promises kept. You can't fool the voters, and so we actually passed another measure to extend that half cent to 2034. And that's the Caldecott Tunnel. That was built a budget of $420 million, and we delivered that for $417 million. And that was delivered ahead of schedule. It's not very often you deliver a tunnel project under budget. So we're highly rated on Wall Street. We sell tax-exempt municipal bonds to accelerate our construction program. So we have a 25-year construction program we deliver in 10 years. We go to market, we're AA+. We used to be a AAA rated, actually higher than California at the time. But we got downgraded by Fitch because they changed the way they rate agencies. But we still get great rates. We're actually platinum rated by the Government Finance Officers Association for 6 years straight. We have great audits, clean audits. We have 20 employees. We paid our PERS liability. We sent a check to PERS for $2.2 million based on the actuarial tables at the time. The PERS payments were paid up. We went from 0.35% to 6.8% of our investment at PERS, so we made money there. And then we just restructured our deal and we saved about almost $11 million on a restructuring of our debt. So these are the things we do. So when the county supervisors, when you talk to our county supervisors in Contra Costa County, please say I told you what we did, because that's a performance measure for me. These are the things we do. We have some pretty innovative things. We'll go into some of that, but I'm pretty sure we deliver everything that Darren delivers. How do we do this? So I think this is very important for the people that manages Darren and Darren's team, because I think this is how we do it. So the first point is, you gotta hire the right people. And so what we try to look for is entrepreneurial spirit, decision making, having the right attitude. We cannot teach that. It's very, very difficult. And so in the process, we know by the time you get to my desk, and we have that one-on-one interview at the end, because we only have 20 people, if they have those traits, we're gonna hire you. And you have to invest in your staff. So this is a CFO generally. Are there any CFOs in this room? Well, I love CFOs, but generally they're frugal. They're frugal. So the CFO asks the CEO, right, this question. Well, the CEO responds, what happens if we don't train them and they stay? And that's a big issue, right? So don't skimp on the admin, don't skimp on the savings, Madam CFO. And then try to create the right environment. People actually wanna work where you think big, you dream big. Get stuff done and have fun while you do it. We spend a lot of time at work, so we want to make sure our employees have fun while they're innovating, while they're delivering the program. So our employees will tell you that they're authorized to make a decision, no matter who it is in our organization, any of the 20, based on these 4 criteria. Will it make us more efficient? Will it be better partnerships? Is it innovative? And does it provide better customer service? If you can say yes to those 4 things, make the decision yes, go forward. If it doesn't work, we call it failing forward. Fail fast, learn from your mistakes, and move on. If somebody has to pay, I'll take the blame. Star Trek, I'm a Star Trek fan. How many of you are Star Trek fans? Anybody here? Okay, so they were marooned on an asteroid. Spock, Captain Kirk, and Scotty. And they were blown off course in this cosmic storm. The Starship Enterprise is in Sector X, and they're in Sector A. Never going to find a needle in a haystack situation. So Captain Kirk asked Scotty, what are our options? He goes, well, we can die of thirst on this planet, on this asteroid, or we can achieve orbit for 30 minutes and we'll die as we re-enter the atmosphere. What did Captain Kirk say? I want that third option. They ultimately took the pod, launched, jettisoned fuel. Chekhov saw the warning of this big flare, and he went and they beamed everybody aboard the Starship Enterprise as they were all getting really sweaty because it was re-entering the atmosphere of this asteroid. The third option, it works. Talk about that. If your employees come to you and say, we can't figure this out, I want the third option. I'm not dying on this asteroid. And a boss of mine one time told me, I gave him a report. He said, who wrote this report? I said, I wrote the report. He said, please close the door. I said, okay, I closed the door. And I thought I was getting praise in private. This is Lee Dieter. I mean, this is a great guy. I'll shut the door. I sit down and waiting for this praise to be reaped upon me. He said, what do you think I pay you for? I don't pay you to do this report. You have 4,000 people in the maintenance program. They could have written that report for you. I pay you to think. So spend 5 minutes out of the day, every day, thinking about the future. And this is a long time ago, and so every day I think about the future. You might want to try it. It works. Our tools are getting better and better. I'm probably, Ollie, did you ever put pen to vellum and do highway design? You never did that. Did you do that? So we're probably the last dinosaurs that were trained at Caltrans that actually did something by hand, because it's all computer now. But in the old days, we used pen on vellum. Today, it's all based on iPad and CAD. And so this is the roadmap for us. Is it's chaotic. It's a different. There's no manual. You know, at Caltrans when I worked there, we had a manual to design a highway. We had a project management manual. We had this manual. There's no innovation manual. And so we're really making this stuff up as we go. And I like that. Transportation planning, somebody talked a little bit about planning. Your long-range plans are very, very important. They're 25 to 30 years out. If you work in a city or you work in a county, your long-range plans are going to generate your capital improvement program. And so Ollie uses 4,000. I was yelled at because I use 3,000 vehicles per lane per hour. So we've broken our county up into 4 subregions. And the idea is East County is still building homes. West County is much like San Francisco. It's built out. All they're doing is they're building up. And so it's a different dynamic in the 4 parts of Contra Costa County. We've changed the way we gather information. Normally you're going to have a town hall here. You're going to invite people at 6 o'clock on a Friday night. Give us your best ideas. Generally you've had that happen. So you have 20 people in the room. You have 10 people that are your consultants. The other 10 don't like you. They just came to complain. And so you're really not getting a good cross-section. And so what we've done is we've actually used technology. Now I'm not on Facebook, but we created our own CCTA Facebook page. We went out and we created a website, Keep Contra Costa Moving. We gave you an allocation of Contra Costa coins, and you could actually vote and spend your money on the projects you wanted to spend your money on, whatever it was. And then we had a telephone town hall. Telephone town halls are about $5,000 to set up the electronics. It's about $15,000 or $10,000 per sub-region to mail out saying, hey, dial in on Friday evening and give us your best ideas. We'll answer your questions live for an hour and a half. And then we run polling questions. In this whole process, we got more comments, this update over a countywide transportation plan than the previous 25 years combined. So using electronics can get you to where your constituents that you want to know, what do you want out of your transportation system? And then we're changing our models. So Ollie mentioned 4,000 vehicles. We're using 3,000 vehicles. We're also modeling greenhouse gas reduction. And so a lot of the red you see in the future may be yellow or green, meaning you're not going to have congestion because the cars are going to follow closer. They're going to crash less. They did a study, the National League of Cities, the 68 major metropolitan areas in the United States, one from each of the 50 states and 18 more. It's a couple years old, but 3% had the impacts of Uber and Lyft identified. That's it. So if you've ever been to Washington, D.C. and you've hailed an Uber or a Lyft, and you look behind you as you're getting into that Uber or Lyft, and you see all these people waving at you, they're actually not waving at you. They're kind of upset because you blocked their way, and it's very difficult to get through town. So it's difficult to modify the built environment, especially so if you don't even measure the impacts of those technologies that are here today. And then 6% consider the impact of driverless car technology. So you might want to take a look at your long-range plan. So this is reverse modeling, 58% zero-emission fleet turnover by the year 2040 and a slight reduction in BMT per capita of 15%. And we can glide into that 80% reduction from 1990 levels by the year 2050. What does that mean? We actually released an RFP. We've selected a consultant. We'll notify that consultant. We're going to change the way we approach electric vehicle infrastructure, the charging systems. And we're not just going to use quick chargers that are above ground and type 2 chargers or chargers in your home. We're looking at power walls. So it's a combination of solar with used Tesla batteries. You can actually earmark a section of your home. Beyond that system, you can actually sell energy back to the grid during peak hour, but also you can charge your electric vehicles. And we've just released a study for the results of a pilot with a company called Elix. So Elix is going to use what they call it's inductive charging, but it's a magneto-based inductive charging. So the system sets in your car, and then you drive up to the curb, and this process is set up in the curb, and it will charge your vehicle, so you don't even see it. You'll just see the transformer. This is changing the way so there's impacts. There's a lot of technology impacts, but there's also a lot of home delivery impacts. And so I have people that actually never go to the store. They actually just buy everything online. If they don't like it, they send it back. Apparently it's free. So they never go into the store. I like touching the fabric. I like walking through the store. But younger people, they just buy, and they send back. So that's creating a burden on your transportation system. And as your population grows, it's going to have more impact. I'm not going to go into all he talked about this, but the question is, do we ever have to widen a roadway? There are some roads that you're going to have to widen. 101 is probably a good example. Imagine those two 12-foot lanes are now three 8-foot lanes. So you just add a lane of capacity for a minimal amount of money. You added in a lane to that facility, and I don't care where it is very costly. Very impactful to your neighborhoods. People don't like all the dust, all the changes in alignment. And then we're trying to use the shoulder. Am I going too far?
No, you're good. I'm just speaking to the mic. We got it just a little closer.
Thank you.
There.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Derek. I'm not used to this, I don't give too many speeches, so.
Yeah, right.
So we're also very close to using the outside shoulder on Interstate 680 during peak hours. So when the speeds drop below 35 miles an hour, the bus gets out on the shoulder. It stays on time. And so we're close to, we're gonna have to beef up the shoulder. And Ollie mentioned pavement change. If a vehicle doesn't wander, how many of you own a Tesla? Okay, so your Teslas, when you put it in autopilot, it stays centered in the lane, exactly centered in the lane. So the next Tesla is exactly in the same location. Imagine if their truck's platooning and impact loading on that pavement, it never has a chance to heal. And so we're gonna have to figure out a way of dealing with that issue in the future. Because I used to be head of maintenance, right, Ollie? So I worry about maintenance. And then complete streets. So this is the idea. So in Contra Costa County, if we had passed our measure in 2016, we were gonna do 4 more pilot projects, complete streets. The idea is, you have a neighborhood and you have a transit hub, and they're close together, but you have a 4-lane arterial. Why not make it 2? Make it more conducive to walking, put better lighting in, have a separate bike path, and then worry about freight delivery. This works. And so in our case, across from our office, though it's close so you can complain, walk over to our office and complain if you didn't like it, we actually changed the local arterial Geary Street. And so more people are walking, more people are riding their bicycles. It's a healthier activity and it's safer. The highest percentage increase in the fatality rate is pedestrians. And yet we want you to walk more, we want you to bike more. And then home delivery. Home delivery is going to change the way we approach the built environment in your cities and your counties. This is just one quick slide on a smart city. It does require broadband. We're actually going to weigh in with the California Transportation Commission on their guidelines for commute corridors to make sure that we add the term, make sure there's duct and fiber in those projects, at least suggest that. Because there's going to be so much data that's going to have to be sent back and forth. What's going to happen in the future is these vehicles are going to put off a lot of data. And so it's called computing on the edge. You're going to have to bring your computing power close to the host in order to analyze that and send it, encrypt it, de-encrypt it, and then send it back encrypted back to the car so it de-encrypts it and understands where the cars are, what's happening in the transportation system. In order to do that, you're going to have to bring that information closer. You can't send that information to Tennessee, have it analyzed and sent back. It takes too long. And so we're worried about that. So why autonomous vehicles? Safer roads, less congestion. Half the congestion in California is non-recurrent. The majority of that's accidents. So if you can reduce accidents, you can actually help ease congestion. And then I mentioned air quality. And then the other piece is the ability to access the underserved portions of our community that we don't hardly talk about. The people like me that are getting old, they can't walk as far or as fast. The people that are physically disabled, and/or I had a gentleman come to me the other day. We had the first Grand Marshal in an Independence Day parade. It wasn't a human, it was actually our SAV. But we had to put it on a tow truck because it was a 21,000 day fine because we didn't have a license at the time to operate it. And he came up to me and goes, I want that, and I want that tomorrow. I said, why do you want that tomorrow? You look perfectly fine to me. He said, I have macular degeneration. DMV took my license away. So what I took for granted all those years, I don't have that mobility, and you need to help me. And so those are examples in the folks, the young people that choose to live in big cities that don't own a car, or folks that can't afford a car. We need to make sure that they have access to this new technology as well. 94% of causes of accidents, human error. I'm asked all the time, how do you ensure the software is correct? Well, DMV ensures that the software is correct. They issue you a license. That's probably not a good answer, by the way. And then a lot of people die on the roadways. It's up to over 40,000. When I was at Caltrans in the mid-2000s, 42,000 deaths on the roadways. We were making a good attempt to try to bring that down. I think distracted driving, the iPhone's 10 years old. I think it's caused the smartphones, that whole connection, it's caused a lot of distraction. Not only in the drivers, but in the pedestrians and bicycle riders as well. So there was a study that was done by Texas Transportation Institute. A car with one person makes 4 trips a day versus a shared autonomous vehicle. And somebody asked about how do you deal with those just driving around the community aimlessly. Well, I have a solution, or we have a solution for that. It showed that the SAV would eliminate 9.1 trips, so about 18 cars. Assuming Assembly Member that all the regulations are correct and well thought out and not kind of putting a damper on innovation. And I mentioned this before, accessibility. So these are the things we're doing in Contra Costa County. We know you can't build your way out of congestion, so we're just going to finish an interchange at Interstate 680 and State Route 4. We're actually using technology, trying to leverage technology. The young people that are taking our places in my business are not only going to have to know how to deal with roadway design, bridge design, but how to leverage technology. It's going to be a whole different situation in the future. We're going paperless in construction. I know you're not here to hear about that, but we're getting more comments, more inspection notes, about 300% more, because we're using electronic inspection with your iPads. It tracks exactly when you took the picture, where you took the picture, and the day you took the picture. You as a taxpayer should like that because it helps us fight those claims, those issues. We're probably one of the few agencies using drones. We started this. This is a borrow job. We're raising the freeway elevation. Why is this important? Well, the surveyors walk along that live lane of traffic, and it's not safe. It's more efficient, and we're not trying to take surveyors' jobs. We're trying to put them in areas that, like the skew on this bridge, make sure that super elevation is right, the false work is right, the forms are right. And so we're just using different technologies to make our jobs more efficient and safer. We're using virtual reality to tell you how the project's going to look when it's done, how to drive the job, how your off-ramp, because a lot of people don't want to change the off-ramp that they take to go home. They just want to take the same off-ramp every day. And when you modify that, you hear about it. Well, we're trying to give them advance notice that, hey, your off-ramp might be modified. You may have to go down or come back a little bit, but you can still get home. We're using technology to rate the roads. So it's important so you can make better decisions on which road is cracking faster. We're using integrated corridor management strategies on Interstate 80 in the Bay Area. It was an ICM project. There's one down here in San Diego. The idea is use technology to help the flow of traffic. I know you're upset when you sit at a ramp meter. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to work with the cable industry to have you sit at home. Because one out of every other house has cable. And so how do we leverage the cable and the accessibility into your home? Maybe we connect with Nest or something. We're just trying to figure this out. But tell you to leave in 15 minutes, because your phone knows when you leave every morning. Doesn't it tell you? Yeah. It says, oh, your commute to work is 32 minutes. When you see, oh my God, my commute is 42 minutes, something's wrong. Maybe I leave later. Help us balance that system. And smart arterials. Walnut Creek has 100 smart signals. They're using cell technology, but they have sent their signal phasing and timing information out specifically earmarked for an Audi. So if you own an Audi car, on your dash, there's a red, yellow, and green little LED bulb with the area that marks the countdown. So that Audi will start slowing down on that green light. Why? Because there's 3 seconds left. You don't know that, but your car does. Or likewise, flip side on the stop. So it'll take off. It won't take off automatically, but it will alert you. You can see that there's 10 seconds more for a red light, so you can still comb your hair, brush your teeth, or shave, or whatever else people do when they're at a stoplight versus going. Make your arterial smarter. We're trying to protect the connection between BART and the bus. In the old days, the bus would take off on its schedule. BART would come in a little bit late. Now you're ticked off because you have 13 minutes left because it's a 15-minute headway between the buses. We want to protect that connection. Let us know, and we'll hold that bus. And then we'll use technology to get that bus back on schedule. We're incentivizing mode shift. So Scoop, $2. We'll pay you $2 to pick somebody up. We'll pay you $2 to ride. And so we spent about $100,000, and we have facts. We just gave that to Congress, as a matter of fact, on this incentive program. So we're trying to find different ways of invoking the mode shift. When the Olympics come to LA, you're going to hear 10% mode shift. That's what you're going to hear, right, Ollie? Curb space and shared mobility. How do you circulate the TNCs, the Ubers and Lyfts throughout your communities, and then make sure they integrate with your smart bikes, your like e-bikes are coming your way, e-scooters, all these things are coming your way. Integrate all that. We're working on that. And then we just signed a partnership with Lyft to haul our seniors around, including me. I guess I don't qualify yet, but $10,000 a year. We spend a lot of money on paratransit, on rides that we shouldn't have to. And so why not find a different way to move those folks that don't need that special service? And so we're starting to work on this as well. And then we're trying to find a way of using technology to fix our worst corridor in Contra Costa County, Interstate 680. People in Contra Costa were jobs poor, smart people rich. So for some reason, they all get up at the same time in the morning, they go to Silicon Valley. 680 is a mess, just a mess. And they all want to get off at the same time and come home for some reason. And so it takes, like LA, it takes you about an hour to go 10 miles. It's like ridiculous. So why not? And there's a lot of capacity on the freeway. It's just in the form of empty seats. So how do we invoke that mode shift? Momentum Station, largest secure autonomous vehicle test bed, about the fifth size of San Francisco. Bunker City, you can test any intersection configuration. It's got old bridges. It's got 2 tunnels, 1,400-foot long tunnels, and it's got old pavement. It's got curvilinear alignment. It's not all straight. Where do you want these vehicles tested? On a brand new piece of pavement with brand new striping, or on an old pavement with no striping? So you want to test in the worst case scenario, this offers that, this test bed. As Ollie mentioned, 1 of 10, there's a weird thing about this administration and the last administration. If the last administration did something, this administration wants to change it a bit. So anyway, they got rid of the designations, but we did win that, 1 of the 10. We recently signed agreements with other countries. Why is that important? Because the sharing of data will help accelerate the deployment of this technology. We signed a 4-country agreement: New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, and the country of Contra Costa. It's a big deal. And four goals: create smart jobs. We're jobs poor, so we're trying to create some of the Silicon Valley jobs in Contra Costa County. I mentioned efficient mobility. Cars refuse to crash, and they'll follow closer. Enhanced safety, very important. Too many people die on the roadways. It's an epidemic. We can fix that. And then electric motor, battery, healthier environment. These are our partners. Recently we signed Intel. They want to bring 100 cars out. Baidu is AI, artificial intelligence. So is Toyota. Toyota's doing artificial intelligence work. Honda's been around for a long time. The Coors beer the Budweiser beer delivery of Uber Freight. I've actually been in the vehicles driving down 101. The truck driver has to hover his hands over the wheel. They've stopped the freight initiative at Uber, but they're still testing now their partnership with Toyota in their Sienna van. So they're looking at a driverless shuttle with 6 seats or 8 seats in it. And then Lyft has been around a long time. And Sumitomo is a first-year supplier. AAA wants to get the word out. 87% of adults want an operator to take over. The elevator, when it was first invented, people wanted an operator to pull that brake in case the cable was cut. You don't see an elevator operating anymore. As the technology gets more robust and tested, I think that'll go away. And then Easy Miles, the shuttle that we use for our first and last mile solution. And that's our SAV project. So we were the first to get legislation in the United States exempting us from a steering wheel, a brake pedal, and an operator. We were the first to get we were first to bring the vehicle into North America, a level 4, meaning it just needs a precision-based map to operate. No operator, because there's no steering wheel. And then we got the first piece of legislation, AB 1592, no driver, no steering wheel, no brake pedal. And we got the first license to operate a fully autonomous vehicle on public streets in California. In fact, we have the only license. We have 2 of them in San Ramon. They're operating now on public streets. These are and I'm not saying they're obstacles. I like going through NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They ask good questions. Why is that important? If we make a mistake, so we're the 2nd vehicle on public streets in America. The first was Las Vegas. We say we're the only one that hasn't been hit yet. Because they got hit 2 hours after they ran that shuttle by a truck. Imagine in California, the pendulum generally swings from yes you can to no way. There's no in between like that. So we're very cognizant of that. Department of Motor Vehicles is a great partner. PUC, if you're a private sector operating a self-driving vehicle, you have to go to their jitney service. So it's better if you have a transit operator operating these vehicles. And then funding has been a problem. Although the governor gave us $3.5 million in his budget last year, and we have to match that dollar for dollar for $27 million. And once again, no roadmap for this type of testing. Here's the vehicle. We started testing at Momentum Station in 2016. It seats 6, it stands 6 more. In 2017, we moved it to a 600-acre business park. Started testing in the parking lot, and then on March 6th of this year, we were the first test on public streets. It's not taking jobs currently. What it's doing, it's complementary. It's a first and last mile solution. That was the fourth thing that we heard from our constituents in that process we used. Was we use transit, but by the time we get to BART, there's no parking spaces. Or it's too far to the transit stop and there's no parking spaces there. So how do we get on a bus? How do we get on BART? How do we get on the train? So it's complementary. These are our partners. So Best Mile is a fleet management, route optimization software package. So you ask the question, what happens when these vehicles are just aimlessly riding around? They actually work on making sure it's as efficient as possible on the pickups and drop-offs. The City of Concord has been a great partner. BART's worried about parking. It's about $70,000 per space for a multi-level parking structure. $70,000. They charge $1 or $1.50. So it's going to take a long time to get their investment back. Bishop Branch is the business part. Easy Mile is the technology. Advanced Mobility is our consultant. Bay Area Quality Management District gave us $1 million. They want to clean the air. It's an electric vehicle. And then First Transit, if you contract out your transit service, they'll bid on your work. And then the last thing is we have a congestion problem, much like you do down here, and so we're using a mobility as a service. We're trying to gain a 10% mode shift. We think that's going to really help our congestion problem. Here's our mobility as a service. In America, this is European, by the way. It's MOS. In America, it's MOD, Mobility on Demand. And this is kind of the concept, integrating all these various features. So on the bottom here, you have all these data sources. You're going to have to integrate that into one platform. It's going to be on your smartphone or a device. And then those are the services on top. Those are the analytics. So they use this in Finland. They use it in Europe. It's a one platform. I want to ride from point A to point B. It gives you your options. I want it as cheaply as possible. I want it as quick as possible. I want it as green as possible. And in Denmark, they're actually adding the airlines to the airport schedules. Every year we have a summit, much like what you're having here today, and it's on March 8th. We don't know exactly where it's going to be because the City of Concord wants to host it again. So far, it's been down in San Ramon. And thank you for your kind attention. I appreciate it.
We do have time for a couple questions over here today.
Thank you, and I assume that the Lyft dial-a-ride or senior dial-a-ride service is being funded with measure money.
Yeah, commute alternative money, yes.
It's been a challenge for us to try and use federal or even TDA money with the restrictions. So just a comment there.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to work, we go to Washington, D.C. every year with our board chair and vice chair or at least 2 board members. And actually I was invited to speak at the innovation panel for the subcommittee on transit and highways for the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in Washington, D.C. earlier last month. And they told me specifically, don't talk about regulation reform. That was the word I got before I even walked into the hearing. And it's because when we go to Washington, we talk about those kinds of issues. We say, can we help us? So the old regulations sometimes don't fit with new technologies. And so let's find a better way. Why can't we deviate from fixed route service? Just because you run from point A to point B on the same road and you don't pick anybody up, you get credit for running a route. Why not deviate the route? And that was what we're trying to do with technology. I'm old, so I can't walk to the bus stop as fast, so I give up and I hit a button that says, can I be a rider? And they say yes. And so the bus driver deviates the route, picks me up, because that's what a bus is for, and then gets back on route, gets back on time. So we go to Washington, and we'll take that back, because if this works, we're trying to get the data, then we're going to work on FTA.
Randy, I have a question. First, I'd like to thank you. A very inspiring talk, and what you're doing up in Contra Costa is certainly a model for us in Ventura County. One of the questions I have is, I just got back from a trip to the Eastern Sierra, and one of the things I noticed as an observation, and I didn't see it reflected in your obstacles sheet, but I would say that 2/3 of the vehicles I saw on the road were trucks. America has a love with these larger vehicles that don't reflect in some of these new designs, and there's a lot of brand new trucks. I mean, I saw, these huge dualies out there and big SUVs, and it was anything but the smart car. I'm driving along my little Prius thinking I'm going to get engulfed by these things, and I just wondered, how are you dealing with that, conflict perhaps in this love for larger vehicles and yet We're kind of going, we want to be going in this new direction futuristically, but how do you handle that?
So the Ford has announced that the only vehicles they're building is the F-150 SUVs and one passenger sedan. So the world understands from a marketing perspective that the truck is going to be around for a long time. And many times it's used for agricultural purposes and those kinds of things. And so what we're trying to do is, we're not focused in on what should we get rid of. We're focused in on how do we integrate. So currently, every lane is 12 feet. So in the future, that's not going to be a problem. Because the vehicles that are fully autonomous are going to have sensors, and they're not going to hit it. I mean, you might have somebody trying to cut it off and things like that. But ultimately, we're not trying to take vehicles off the road. We're trying to integrate new technology onto the roads. And then as time goes on, I guess the best way I can answer your question currently is if we can get the cost of transportation down to 20 cents a mile, would you own a car? Because most people here don't know what it costs per mile to operate their vehicle. But when you start getting down to 20 cents a mile, 15 cents a mile, car ownership may not make a lot of sense to you. There's a guy on Shark Tank that actually has a video out now that's saying, I didn't buy a car because I don't need it. I can actually take Uber and Lyft in New York City and never have to own a car. Don't have to worry about parking, don't have to worry about insurance. Your car is parked 94 or 95% of the day. And so we're trying to integrate the technology first, and then we'll take a look at, hopefully, market share. We'll make a decision on whether or not you really want to own a pickup. Because we get that question all the time. Hey, own an F-150, you're going to pry that thing from my cold, whatever hands. Well, we're not trying to pry anything away from anybody. What we're trying to do is integrate the technology, figure out how it's going to work, and then market share will dictate whether or not you choose to own that vehicle in the future.
Hi, I'm back here. I don't want to be the buzzkill in the room, but if you have no steering wheel, no brakes, right, what happens if it gets hacked into? I mean, what happens to the vehicle at that point?
That's a great question. So we're asked about cybersecurity. We're trying to find a cybersecurity partner right now. So your vehicle that you have now, you have a keyless entry?
Yep.
That's a point of cyber attack.
Yep.
So in your existing car, you have a lot of points of attack. So it's no different than this vehicle here. The difference between this vehicle and your vehicle is there's only one point of attack because it's connected wirelessly to a comm center, and we agreed to that in AB 1592. If that was all by itself and it didn't need communication with the outside or communication to others, it would be like my 1957 Chevy convertible. You can't hack that. There's no computer. So we're trying to hire a cybersecurity firm like BlackBerry, RIM. They're really getting into cybersecurity. So we're trying to find the right firm to help us work with that issue. I think the only really way to do it is get with the Department of Defense and have them secure the AV, because they're very good at that. But I don't know, it's a very, very good question, and it's plagued, I think, us since the invent of the computer generally, because your car has a lot of computers in it now that's very vulnerable. So I'm sorry I can't answer your question.
But I still have a brake pedal on the steering wheel.
Yeah, but it can override your brake pedal and your steering wheel. Yeah, so we've actually had a company come in, plug into, you have an onboard diagnostic port. You can plug it in, and it reads your signal light going on, your windshield wipers going on, your brake lights going on, your brakes, all this stuff. And then you start your car up, you shut it off. This vehicle, this machine, when you hit a button, it'll do everything that you just did, and then it will shut your car and turn it back on at a command. So you have an entry point at a number of locations in your car. But we haven't been successful yet. We're still trying to find a cybersecurity firm. At least start that dialogue so I can have a better answer for you in the future.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. All right, well, we are going to have, for the interest of time and keeping on schedule, that says 12 minutes. I'm sorry to throw cold water on this, but we're going to cut it down to 10 minutes to keep us on schedule so we can get you out of here in time. So if you can rejoin your seat at just 20 after the hour. Appreciate that. And also we want to thank our sponsor of the great refreshments. Crown Castle Salises, they typically provided the refreshments for the parade today. If you're not familiar with Crown Castle